Hey guys, welcome back to my classroom. Today we're going to make a print using turmeric. That's just the regular old spice turmeric that you can find in any grocery store. Most spice racks should have some turmeric in it. It's a really great spice to use for cooking, and it's also actually can be good for your health too. I use turmeric when I have kind of a sore throat. That soft palate in the back of your throat gets kind of sore. So just like you would gargle salt water for a sore throat, you can use turmeric for the soft palate when your soft palate back there gets kind of swollen. So little tip there. All right, but you can also make photographs with it. So what I've got here is just the turmeric. I've got about 10 milliliters of just plain water. You could also use isopropyl alcohol if you wanted to, but I think just water I like water better actually. It's just easier to find. And then I have a paper cup that I'm going to use for mixing. And the reason I have a paper cup as opposed to like a glass or something like that is you want this to be disposable because the turmeric, as you can kind of already see, is stained the inside of that paper cup. So I'll reuse it a few times, but it's gonna stain whatever you mix it in. So paper or styrofoam is a good idea. All right, so then I've also got a negative that I'm going to use, or a transparency. There's an image on this transparency. And I've got some watercolor paper. You can experiment with different kinds of papers. Watercolor papers are usually the best because we're painting an emulsion on here, so they take the liquid really well. But try different kinds of watercolor papers, maybe printmaking papers, even fabric you could try. So good paper. And then I've got some measuring spoons, and I need a teaspoon in particular. And then I've also got some borax here. This is what I'm going to use for the developer in another section of this video. And then I've got just a cheap foam brush, and this works really well. Again, it's disposable, and so I like the foam brushes. Okay, so all we're going to do is I'm going to take my 10 milliliters of water. I'm going to pour it into this cup. And then I'm going to get my teaspoon, and this is about 1 teaspoon of turmeric to 4 teaspoons of water. And 4 teaspoons of water just happens to be just about 10 milliliters. So that's how I'm measuring that out. So it's about a 1-to-4 ratio of turmeric and water. All right, so I'm just measuring that out. It's a little tricky to get just the right kind. All right, that's about a teaspoon. All right, I'm just going to pour it in there. And then I'm going to mix it up really, really well. Make sure that everything's mixed in and all the, kind of get it, I don't know if it's going to dissolve all that much, but just get it mixed up really well. So you can see that there's kind of a mustardy yellow, really dark yellow color. All right, mix it up really, really good. Okay, and then I'm just going to take my brush and I'm just going to paint it onto the paper. Now it's going to appear pretty light at first, but that's okay. I'm going to do multiple coats. So I'll paint it on there, and then I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll actually paint. I like to do about 3 coats. So paint it on there, let it dry, do another coat, let it dry, and do a 3rd coat, and then you should be ready to go. I'm just going to leave it at that for now, and I'll come back and we'll do the exposure and then the developer as well. So I'll be back. I'm just going to, like I said, let this dry, do a couple coats, and then we'll come back and do the other parts. Okay, see you here in a few minutes. Alright guys, welcome back. So actually I just let my paper dry overnight. You don't have to let it dry overnight. It could probably just be in a couple hours, or you can even blow dry it to get it dry. But my paper is dry now, and I did about 3 coats of the turmeric, and you can, I don't know if you can tell, it's a little bit darker now, so I've got a pretty nice kind of mustardy yellow color. So I've got my paper that's coated, and I've got a negative that I'm going to use, or just a transparency, actually. It's not a negative, but it's a transparency with an image on it. And then I've got a couple of pieces of glass. I just use plain glass that I get from the hardware store. Make sure that you don't have UV glass. A lot of glass is sold with UV protection in there, and that's exactly what you don't want, because you want the UV light to come through the glass and do its magic on the dyes that are in the turmeric. So make sure you don't have UV glass, and then I always put tape around mine so I don't cut myself on the edges. You could use plexiglass, you could use just a regular picture frame and just take the back out of it and just kind of put this in there. Just as long as you have a way that you can make the transparency be in flush contact with the paper. So all I'm going to do now is just put my transparency on the paper. You might want to flip it this way or that depending on whether the orientation makes any difference. I'm going to set it down here on the piece of glass. And I'm just going to put another piece of glass on top just to put it, press it down so it's nice and tight. And I have flush contact there. All right, now let's go outside and we're going to make an exposure in the sun. All right, guys, I'm outside now and I've got a nice bright sunny day. I've got my turmeric paper, my negative, and glass, and all I'm going to do is just set it out in the sun for about 2 hours. I'm just kind of guessing based on that. I hope that works. It's going to be a lot of trial and error depending on the time of day or the time of year, what the sun is like, where you're actually setting it outside, what your transparency is. So there's a lot of variables, but I'm going to go with about I'm going to do 2.5 hours, say two or 3 hours, and then I'll come back and get it, and then we'll do the developing process. All right, so I'm just going to set it out here, make sure it's got good bright sun, and that's it. We'll just set it, and then we'll come back later. Okay guys, welcome back. So I got my turmeric anthotype out from outside and it's right here. It's a little bit bleached out. It's probably hard to tell from the screen and it's a little bit subtle actually, but it does look like it's bleached a little bit around here. So now I'm going to make my developer and I'm going to put it in there and we'll see how it came out. So this is always kind of an exciting and let's hope it worked kind of thing. All right, so I have 1,000 milliliters or a liter of water, and I'm going to put it in this pan. You can use any kind of tray or dish, just big enough that your paper could fit into it. I like these aluminum baking pans that you can get there for like baking turkeys, or caterers use them. You can get them in most grocery stores. So I'm just going to pour the water in there, and then I've got some borax, and let me grab a tablespoon. Camera here. All right, so I've got a tablespoon of borax, and I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it in there because I want the borax to dissolve. All right, so I'll just kind of do this and try to get the borax to dissolve a little bit. If you wanted to, you could take the spoon or take some kind of a mixing device and get it to go and just kind of do that a little bit. Just get it all to dissolve. Try not to spatter too much. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, and then what we want to do is just put the print into the borax. And I can already tell a little bit, it's probably hard to even see on the camera, but hopefully we're going to see a little bit more contrast when we put this in there. So let's cross our fingers and toes and hope that this works out. All right, so as you can see, it's getting a little bit more of like a brown kind of tan color. Now, I've never printed this negative before. I was a little bit curious as to what would happen. It's not a really sharp, really clear, really high contrast image. Again, that's going to depend a lot on the image that you're using, the negative, the time of day, and how long of an exposure you do. But you can clearly see a difference in the highlights and shadows. And so what happened was that the unexposed areas of the turmeric, when the borax hit it, it caused a chemical reaction, and I don't know what that chemical reaction is, I'm not a chemist, to darken the turmeric right there. Okay, so that's it. So the next thing I would do is just dump this borax water and just rinse it with some regular tap water for a couple of minutes, let it dry, and that's it. That's all there is to it. So that's how you make a turmeric print, and see what you can come up with and ask if you have any questions. All right, happy printing, guys.